Welcome to episode 175 of the Daniel Yoris podcast. What to do when you get injured. Let's go. A very intelligent university professor of mine once told me that there are 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and athletic injuries. And unfortunately, for people like me, athletic injuries come far more frequently than we'd like them to, and frankly, than they should. Now, if you're a listener of the podcast, which obviously you are because you're here, episode 172, which is not that long ago, only 3 episodes ago, was my 10-year look back at my knee surgery and all the injuries that I've been through and had and suffered. I didn't want to use that word suffered because it seems too drastic, but suffered injuries over basically my whole life. Like there was a 10-year look back of the knee surgery and coming over that, and then 10 years previous to that of injuries, blah, blah, blah. So this whole kind of like thing of looking back and what it was. And then just this week, I'm recording this on a Friday, and Tuesday of this week, the next chapter of that story is being written. And it's not of my knee. My knee is fine, but very, it's not that long of a story, I guess. But I was doing squats, lifting decently heavy, but not anything like crazy, no PR level of lifting or anything like that. And my adductor, which is like kind of the groin inside of the leg muscle or group of muscles rather, kind of just popped/tore kind of on the way up. It didn't tear completely, and I know that because there's not a ton of bruising and all that stuff. But it sucks a lot, but it is what it is. The next injury, the next chapter of my injury saga, which seems to never end. Since the whole time of all my injuries, like going back to when I was like 10 or 11 years old and the first one really happened, I'm not sure that there's been more than one time where I've been able to string together 12 months of consecutive training, which is pretty crazy. Like I'm pretty big on the fact that consistency is the absolute number one most important factor in the gym, and it is most important factor in making your progress in the gym. And it definitely is, but I have not been very consistent over the course of my lifting and training career simply due to injury, because it's consistency within that and, always doing something and whatever. But when you can only train half of the stuff for most of the time, like that's not really, you can't string together enough time. So the most consistent people are people that can string together months and months and years of consistency together. And sure, if you kind of zoom out, yes, it's been consistent and all that stuff, but for the amount of time that I've been training, I should be in way better shape, should be way stronger, all that stuff. But it's actually been not that much time that I've been training because of all the injuries. And so, it is what it is. This is my life. And I realize that I'm definitely an outlier in the frequency in which I get injured in doing seemingly, benign stuff. And really, this is the second injury ever that I've had actually in the gym. Everything else has been outside of lifting weights. So that's a little bit new as well. It definitely sucks. I'm very upset. The physical pain is there, but it's nothing compared to just like the emotional pain of kind of going through yet another injury. And yes, I get it in the grand scheme of things. This is not like some deep emotional pain. I'm not traumatized, and I get it. Like there's obviously way worse things in life than like straining your adductor. Like I get it. Save it for yourself. But whatever. It hurts. It hurts inside. So, all that being said, to spin this into a positive, figured I'd record this episode because for sure at some point you are going to get injured. This is just almost a guarantee. Whether it's going to be a significant injury or seemingly insignificant injury, just a little strain, a little tweak, a little something here and there, like these things happen and it's normal, and you got to have some strategies and whatever to get over them. Now, I'm pretty good at getting over injuries. Don't ask me about how to not get injured, because obviously I don't have the answer to that question. I don't have the universal answer as to how to not get injured. Now, in general, you want to make sure that you're strong, want to make sure that you're mobile, and I've recorded episodes, and I'll link them in the show notes about mobility training and how to stretch and how to warm up properly and making sure that you're getting your rest and all that stuff. Like all of those things, like that's how you not get injured. You take care of yourself generally, and you hope for the best. But when you're pushing the boundaries, sometimes there's just bad luck. You step on a rock and roll your ankle. Like, these things happen. Injuries happen. So there's no way that you can not get injured. The only thing that you can do is make yourself strong and resilient so that when injuries happen, they are less bad than they would otherwise be, and your recovery will be faster than it would be if you were weak and completely out of shape. So I wish I could give you the answer as to how to not get injured, but I'd be a huge hypocrite even trying. First of all, there's not an answer, but second, I'd be a huge hypocrite in even trying to explain that, because obviously I get injured all the time. So the last thing before two more things before I kind of get into it. One, should be pretty obvious, but like, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, manual therapist, blah, 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 all that stuff. Be intelligent, but this is just my advice and my tactics and protocols that I use. And second, completely unrelated to all that, but I've noticed that a significant amount of people who listen to this podcast don't subscribe to the podcast, be it on YouTube or Spotify, Apple, whatever. Like, I can see the podcast stats are kind of shitty, actually, or not stats, but like the analytics are like they're very rudimentary. But I can see how many people listen. I can see how many people are subscribed. It's a very low percentage of you who are subscribed. So please, please, please subscribe to the podcast. It helps immensely. It costs nothing monetarily or even time-wise from you. Just hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified when new episodes come up, and that's all that will happen. But it helps this podcast grow tremendously, which then helps you in return. And the other thing that I'd like to encourage you to push towards is just please to sign up for my email list, my email newsletter. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. You'll be able to get my free protein cheat sheet, which has everything you need to know about how much protein you need to get and all the best sources of protein and how to fit that into your lifestyle. So that'll be there, and that's just for updates and another way to stay in touch, which is a format of media that I enjoy much better than social media, Instagram and Twitter and all that. But podcast still number one. So just another way to stay in touch should anything crazy happen. But yes, please do those things. Subscribe to the pod, sign up for the email list, and that's that. Let's get into my protocols for what to do when you get injured. Probably a little rambly, but cool. I've got an 8-step protocol. Let's get into it. Step 1. This should be pretty obvious. Do your best to assess the severity of the injury. Is anything broken? Are you bleeding profusely? Is anything like completely numb? Are you in excruciating pain? Obviously, that's a little bit subjective, but excruciating pain. Are you dizzy or concussed? Do you have a head injury? Like if you rolled your ankle or something, did you also fall and hit your head on the pavement or wherever you were? This is important to know as the first thing, or important to just make note of as the first thing, because if the answer is yes to some of those things, like skip the rest of this list and go to the hospital. Like that's what happens. You've fallen over and something is completely torn, or you broke your leg, or you broke your arm, or you smacked your head and something is bleeding way more than just a little scrape or something like that. Go to the hospital. Don't be stupid. Don't muck around with this stuff. Like if you need to assess whether it's an emergency, get yourself to the hospital. We've been very, I would say, questioning of the medical system, but one thing about the medical system that we say it's a sick care system, right? And that means they're very good at dealing with things once they've happened. You break your arm, there's no, home remedy, take care of yourself and sleep it off. Like, no, go to the hospital with modern medicine, cast it up, do things properly. So we don't need to spend any more time on this. Assess the severity of the injury, and then if you need to go to the hospital, do so. If not, then proceed. Step 2. This is probably the most important step, and it is to keep it moving. So what that means is this. If you hurt, I'll use the example of my injury because it just happened and it's fresh and it kind of makes sense. So I was squatting when I did it. Now, the very first thing that I did again was make sure, okay, like I'm good. Then, second, keep it moving. What that means is you need to just move your body in some way. So you need to find out where you can move that part of your body that's injured in the pain-free range. Pain-free range doesn't mean squat all the way down or bend your elbow and extend your elbow if it's an elbow injury or whatever it means. It just means like, what can you do with that injured body part that is pain-free? Find out what that is. It should be pretty easy to do so. and then continue to do that. You want to keep it moving. Getting blood flow to the area is incredibly important. And I'll back up 1 second and say that if you feel like you can't even really move that area a lot, even just walking or cycling or some form of systemic movement is going to help you because it's increasing blood flow through your entire body. What happens after an injury is that part of the body is going to want to protect itself. This is why we get swelling, we get tightness, and we get pain. Pain is it's a teacher and a protector. When something is painful, it's like a signal from your brain to yourself, to your consciousness, I guess, to say like, hey, there's something wrong with this. Don't do X. And every time you do X, I'm going to send a pain signal because I don't want you to do that because it's going to break or snap or be not good. So we need to honor that, which means move, but in the pain-free range. Now, the movement and the blood flow is how we get nutrients, healing stuff, quote unquote, to that area. If you get really cold, you get completely cooled down and you stop moving, you completely stop your work, or you just sit down and don't move at all and get really stiff, that area is going to be so much stiffer after. The other side of like this pain as a protector thing is this. It's protecting you from yourself, but if you're very conscious of it, you can continue to move and you should continue to move through that thing. So it's trying to send you a warning signal like, hey, don't do anything dumb here, but that doesn't mean don't do anything. It just means don't overexert what this current injured tissue is now capable of, which is way reduced from what it was previously capable of doing. There is a scientific principle. There's something called angiogenesis. Angiogenesis is like when your body is creating new blood vessels to send to an area. Now, there are tons of medications that work like this, and something that we'll talk about maybe towards the end, drugs and medications and various things that you can take that help promote this, but blood flow in general is what you want, and it will be created. Now, this is also why it's so important to be on top of your cardio. If you have better blood flow through your body, your blood vessels, your veins and arteries are healthy and in good working condition, your heart rate is good, your blood flow is good, all that stuff, then you're going to be able to get nutrients via your blood to the injured area. When those nutrients get there, then they can start the healing process of repairing, whatever damaged tissues there are. So you need to facilitate that movement by continuing to move and avoiding your body seizing up and becoming more painful and more tight, because the tighter it gets, it just wants to protect you. It doesn't know that you necessarily want to be able to move again. It just wants to protect and prevent further damage. Now, this can also make the healing process longer if you just let that happen. You let that thing seize up and tighten up and get really stiff. It might not hurt, but it's going to be way more difficult to heal it eventually. So you got to keep moving. This is the same thing. This is how inflammation is, right? We want to keep moving so that we don't let the swelling increase too much. There's going to be some swelling, and that is a driving of fluids and nutrients to the area to, one, protect it, and two, deliver the nutrients there. I know that I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I promise this is going to all tie together. When something becomes inflamed, think of a joint like your knuckle. It's a good example. If you smack your knuckle on something and it becomes inflamed, the reason why it hurts and the reason why it's hard to move is because there's not that much space in the joint. Like, I'm showing my finger on the video right now, but there's not that much space in the joint of your finger. If there gets 5 millimeters or 5 milliliters rather of fluid in there, well, now this joint space is all pushed out and really compacted. So it becomes harder to move, and that is part of its protecting against you continuing to move it. Now, this can stay there, and if that inflammation is not ever flushed out, and it gets flushed out by movement and blood and nutrients getting through and cycling through it, that part of the body becomes very stiff, becomes very painful, and it will become much more difficult to rehab it back to full health. So, sum all that up. Step 2, after you've determined that this is not an emergency that requires an immediate hospital visit, is to keep moving your body in whatever way possible in a pain-free range of that affected joint or muscle or whatever part of your body that you've just injured. Keep moving. The blood flow is going to help you down the line, and it's going to help you immediately with bringing that level of pain down and restoring function to that injured body part. Step 3. Now that you are generally just moving, you're walking, you're cycling, you are, just doing whatever. This is kind of a general thing, but I guess just continue to assess what's happened. And what I mean by that is this. What movements make it hurt? What movements make it feel good? When you know these two things, that is going to tell you a lot about what you are currently capable of. Okay, if you can squat down, 10% of the way, that's good. If you go below 10%, you know that, that's where that pain starts to kick in. Okay, so you're going to test and tweak these things out. Obviously, do it very carefully, be holding on to someone, have someone with you, all that stuff. But as you are moving, start to kind of, wiggle and move your body around. If you did something to your shoulder, like if you move your shoulder forward or you move your arm forward, does that hurt? No, that's okay. But if I do it on a little bit upwards of an angle, that hurts. Ooh, okay, I feel it pinch there. I know that that's not good. I know not to do that right now because that is painful. You've got to determine what movements you can do and what movements are causing pain, and then don't do them. The next thing with this is try your best, and this is usually pretty difficult, but try your best to remember what exactly were you doing at the moment when the injury happened. Not the exercise that you were doing, because obviously you'll know that, but in the case of my squat, and I actually don't know the answer to this in this current injury that I'm dealing with, but when I was squatting, did my knee cave in? Did I rotate a little bit? Did I push my knee out? Did I shift my weight one way or the other? Did, any number of these little things happen? Now, the reason to try your best to remember this, again, it's very difficult because it usually happens very quickly and, you don't even realize it. But if you can, when you can identify what happened, when you eventually, and this is something that we'll talk about later, but when you eventually go to see your athletic therapist, physio, chiro, whoever, manual therapist, and you can kind of explain to them in non-anatomical terms. You don't need to know anatomy and physiology to be able to figure this out. You're just like, oh, my knee moved this way, and then my hip hurt. Like, okay, you can explain that to your manual therapist. They will be able to understand the underlying anatomy and physiology that is relevant to those tissues, and it will greatly help them diagnose and assess the injury, and then therefore help you get over the injury better. So think of it as just like when I do this, it hurts. If you can figure out all of the things that recreate your pain, you can then the inverse of that, all the things you can do that don't recreate pain, you can continue to do those, and you can let someone know who's more qualified than yourself, here's all the things that hurt me. What do I do about it? And then they will better be able to tell you the individual plan from there going forward. Step 4. Now that we've determined this is not an emergency, we've kept things moving, we've kind of assessed, or we're going very logical, methodical brain here. Step 4 is time to be upset. It fucking sucks. It is shit to get injured. Especially if you're someone who really identifies as an athlete, as a fit person. Fitness is a very important part of your life. You really enjoy it for both the physical benefits, but probably more so for the mental health benefits. And it's just a thing that you do. And now, like, when it happens to me, I think about, like, I've been injured so many times that the physical pain is like, I'm almost numb to it. And then the only thing that my mind goes to is fucking, this is 4 weeks, this is 6 weeks, this is 8 weeks of dealing with this shit again. I'm very much on the stoicism mentality of or philosophy of things in life. Pretending you're not upset, though, is not helpful. It's okay to be upset. It's also okay to understand, or important to understand, that being upset is not helpful. This is why getting upset and having a tantrum is not step number 1. right? Step number one is like, be logical, think about what's going on, make some good decisions, like get yourself sorted. And then once you're okay, then you can be emotional and you have a little bit of a tantrum and you be a little bit of a baby and you feel shitty about yourself and you start, thinking about, I knew that I should have taken a deload week this week, and I knew I shouldn't have squatted today because I didn't sleep good last night, or I skipped this in my warm up and that's why my shoulder hurts when I bench press. And you start thinking about all these things and like, let those things go, get it out of your system. I think the rule is this: you have one day, like the rest of that day and that sleep, you get one day to be a baby and be a little puss about it. And then you got to get over it. And by the way, let me just interrupt myself because I said that word and people are going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. When you refer to someone as a pussy, the actual word has nothing to do with women, females, genitalia. It is a direct reference to the word, and I believe it's pronounced pusillanimous. Pusillanimous. Let me Google it right here. Pusillanimous definition. Pussillanimous, which is an adjective that means showing a lack of courage or determination or being timid. So, yeah, it has nothing to do with that. So don't get offended by it. And if you get offended by that, then that's on you. But anyways, you get one day to be a puss, and then you got to get over it, because being upset and being sorry for yourself is not helping anyone. It's not helping you, and it's not helping anyone around you, and it's not helping you get over this thing. So have your tantrum, be upset, acknowledge the emotions that are happening within you and all that stuff. Try and use that to drive you forward as motivation to rehab this aggressively and do your best to not make this ever happen again. So as much of a degree as this is within your control. And then you got to get on with it, okay? So it's okay to be upset. Be logical first, then be emotional second. Let it out. Get over it. Don't let it hang over your head, and then you got to get on with your life. Step number 5. Now, by this time, like you're home, like, the injury is happened a couple of hours ago. You're kind of settled, and maybe it's not like throbbing in crazy pain or whatever anymore. But like now we've got to start thinking about, okay, well, what do we do? What do we do next? Like, how do I move on from this now? So you got to think about, what can you still do that is completely unaffected by the injury? Take my example here. Hurt my leg. That means that I can't do, I'm not squatting or deadlifting right now. I'm not doing really any lower body exercises, but I can still do most upper body exercises. I can still do some forms of cardio, and you've got to just work through your schedule or your training program rather, and see what can you still do. Not training and not being active, unless you're completely broken and whatever, separate issue, but not training and not being active is not an option. So you've got to think about, well, what can I still do? If my shoulder hurts, well, great, I can still squat. I can do this different variation of an exercise. I can use this machine. I can sub out that exercise for this exercise. And I'm saying these very generally because it obviously completely depends on whatever your injury is. But the point is, you've just got to think about, now I know the things that I can't do because I can't do XYZ movements, which you assessed within yourself before, but I can do these movements, which maybe are the same muscle or the same muscle group, but in such a way that is not affected by your injury, or maybe you just really can't train that muscle group right now because that whole thing is just completely affected and just kind of out of commission. And so, well, what can you do instead? Maybe you take a whole day off of your training, and instead of going to the gym 4 days a week, you switch to a 3-day rotation. Fine. That's a totally fine and reasonable solution. But maybe you rework the plan and you were doing, let's say you were doing this. You were doing like a 4-day split of upper, lower, and you hurt your leg and you can do 0 leg training. Like, there's probably something that you could do, but let's just say that you could do 0 leg training. You could go to 2 days a week, or you could just split up your training over 4 days so that you're still going 4 days a week. You're just hitting legs only, or you're hitting upper body only. And so maybe you'd split it up into chest. You'd split it up into vertical pulling motions for back, and then you'd go shoulders, and then you go horizontal pulling motions for back. If those are the 4 days that you want to split up, or you could do push, pull, an arms day and then like a shoulders and abs day if you could do that. Like whatever. There's any number of ways you could split this up. And I don't want to start getting into every single possible scenario now. There's any number of ways to split it up, but you've got to really think about what can you still do to stay on track with the rest of your goals that is not affected by this injury. Because the thing that's going to hurt you the most is if you just let one little injury in one part of your body make you stop training completely. Then you're going to lose progress everywhere. You lose momentum, you lose your schedule, you lose your consistency, you lose that identity, that part of who you are and going to the gym and that community feeling and all of that stuff. You lose all that. So you have to really just think about, hey, what can I do? Be logical about this, be reasonable about this, even if it's stuff that you don't like doing. Maybe this is like really the time to get on your cardio or get on your mobility or start training that muscle group that you always skip. If you hurt your shoulder, you can't bench press, like, hey, maybe it's time to start training legs that you skipped for the past 6 months in a row. Like any of these kind of things. So assess what you can do and then make a plan going forward that includes everything that you can do so that you can still keep up your workouts. Step 6, extremely related, and I guess I already kind of touched on it accidentally, but what can you do that is close to the injury but is unaffected by the injury? So this is, again, let's use an example of an injured knee. Okay, I can't squat, 2 plates in a back squat because my knee hurts. Fine. Can I do a body weight squat? Maybe. Can I do a half range squat? Maybe. Can I do a leg press? Can I do a leg extension? Can I do a different range of motion? Can I do a different angle if I turn my foot out this way or turn my foot in this way or put my hands over here? Or this is again, I already kind of talked about this, but like think about what can you do that is unaffected by the injury. And this is where that pain-free range really comes into play. You want to still get movement, again, going back to the whole like blood flow and using it thing. You want to still get movement and force through that area just in a way that doesn't cause pain. And that may be super light and it may feel like nothing sometimes because the weight might have to be so light. Say you're used to squatting, 200-300 pounds and you're doing bodyweight squats assisted with your hands only half range. Like it feels like nothing. Like you're not going to get a quad pump from that, but you're doing the motion and you're working your way back up to your body being able to do that and feeling good and feeling in a full range of motion and feeling strong again. So really think about what you can do that's not affected by the injury. One note on this for upper body injuries, specifically shoulders, just because, the bigger joints are the things that are injured more so. This doesn't apply as much to like leg injuries because there's just not as many options for this. But for shoulder injuries, different grips tend to oftentimes alleviate some pain. So, you hurt your shoulder and maybe doing a press or a pull with like an overhand grip where your palms are facing down is painful. But if you do an underhand grip, maybe it's less painful. Or maybe if you use a wider grip or a narrower grip, it's less painful. And now I'm not making an assumption as to what's going to be more or less painful for you, but my point is to try all of the things. Most typically, the thing that ends up being the least painful is a neutral grip, meaning palms facing each other, and like a relatively narrow grip with your elbows kind of tucked into your body. And that will be for pushing and pulling. Usually, if there's any grip that is going to be pain-free, it's most often that one. Now, it could be the worst one for you. I don't know. It depends on your injury and your body and all that stuff. But the point is, really experiment with different grips, experiment with different machines. If you're one of these like anti-machine person because like that's not real weight, it's not a dumbbell or a barbell, get over yourself because sometimes the machines, due to the stability that they offer, are going to be the thing that's going to still allow you to train even though you're a little bit injured. So yeah, just make that note. Think about what are other alternatives that you can do to continue training the same thing in a way that is pain-free. Step 7, do you need to go see a manual therapist? I would say this. By manual therapist also, 1 second, I mean like an athletic therapist, a chiropractor, a physiotherapist, an osteopath, whoever. say manual therapist just because like one of those professions or whatever is not better than another. A massage therapist would also be someone included in that. One of those professions is not better than another. Their practitioner is better. There are definitely better practitioners than other practitioners, but it's not because of their profession. It's because of their individual skill and approach to care. So whoever is close to you that you trust and that you go to see, go see that person. So the question is, do you need to go see a manual therapist? I'll say this, for the 95% of people, you should go, especially if there's not a financial block. If you have insurance through your work or through whatever that covers this, like go see it. Go see them. If you don't have, expert or advanced knowledge about anatomy, physiology, rehab protocols, which like, unless you're in this industry, why would you have that knowledge? Then you will save yourself an immense amount of time and pain by seeing a professional to assess and then treat you and direct you going forwards. If you just give an injury enough time, unless you have some other issue going on, some other health issue going on, like the injury will probably heal, but it will take way longer. It will probably not heal as well, as in you hear those people that's like, oh, I hurt my elbow and my elbow's just never been the same since. And you're like, oh, did you hurt your elbow like last week, like you were doing something? You're like, no, I hurt my elbow like 7 years ago. And it's like not the same. Like, oh, 7 years, like what do you mean? How can you be injured for 7 years? It doesn't make sense in a row. So that's someone who didn't rehab their thing properly. So a therapist will help you rehab that thing properly, and it will heal faster. And if you don't rehab it properly, it will also be more susceptible to re-injury and continual injury. You don't want to be one of these people, again, with the elbow thing that's like, oh, I just have a bad elbow. I just like have a bad ankle. Like sometimes that happens. And I guess I'm kind of that person that has a bad knee, but there's some different reasons for that. You want to avoid that as much as possible. And that means rehabbing your injuries accordingly. So the trade-off is this. If you want to try and be a hero and figure this all out on your own, you can. You will probably not succeed at it, and you will cause yourself greater pain and greater headache going forward. So again, for 95% of you, if you get injured, go see a manual therapist. I still go see an athletic therapist. I've been injured more than everyone listening to this podcast, most probably. And I still go see an athletic therapist for my injuries because I know that she can assess me from a different angle than I can assess myself and say, hey, maybe you should do this. Maybe you should try this. Maybe you should stop doing this, or whatever the case is. So go see a therapist. Go see a professional. That's why they exist. They're great. You'll be blessed if you find someone who's really good. There are a lot of poor practitioners out there. If they are just sticking you on some machine and say, yep, you got to see me, 2-3 times a week for the next 6 weeks. And just to kind of, you show up and they stick you on a machine and, they do some hocus pocus, rub your leg for a little bit and then leave. Like, that's not the person you need to be seeing. You need to be someone who's like getting in there, making a noticeable difference from the first appointment that you see them. They can communicate exactly what they think it is, the injury is, and have an intelligent protocol for you to follow going forward that is active, that includes you lengthening and strengthening the thing that you injured so that you don't get injured again. Like just putting a machine on it, making the pain go away. Like anyone could do that at home. Like you don't need to go see a physio for that. So if that's been your experience and that's why you're like, I don't go to that kind of stuff, well, you just have been going to bad people, unfortunately. So go find a better therapist. That's the end of that. Step 8, and this is the final step. From this point on, exactly what you need to do is going to be very individualized to your specific situation. In general, rehab protocols, it's kind of stupid and funny that I just said it's going to be very specific and then I'm just going to go into a generalized statement, but roll with me here. In general, the rehab protocol is to strengthen and expand a range of motion in an injured area. if I hurt my elbow and I can't really straighten my elbow, the two main goals of rehab is to eventually get that thing to straighten all the way and then to get it strong through that entire range of motion back to your strength prior to the injury and then eventually beyond that. That is that's what's happening with therapy. There are many, many protocols and many modalities and tools and methods in order to get something loose, lengthened, expand range of motion, and strengthened. And that's where like the specificity comes in. But if your rehab is not, and this is rehab that you're doing on your own or with a therapist, but if your rehab is not doing those things, then you're not actually doing anything. You're just doing pain management, which fine, that's part of it, maybe, but like you're not actually getting better. You're just making the pain signals go away. So rehab is get it moving and get it strong. The specifics of how to actually do that are going to be different for every person and different for every injury. I can't say that, hey, you have a shoulder injury, so do these things and your shoulder is guaranteed to be better. We can speak in generals, like say hey, these 3 shoulder exercises are great for XYZ injury. And that might be the thing that's like, yeah, you start there and then you say, oh, okay, the first one was good. And then the second one was like, that one kind of felt really weird, or it actually caused more pain. Like, okay, you don't do that one then. This is where the specificity comes in. There are some general principles and general like protocols and whatever that you can start to follow, but they're always just a framework and a place to start. And the therapists, they will run this way as well. It's like, okay, this is my, the way that I treat knees, but they have like a framework in their head of what's going on, and then they'll try those modalities, techniques, exercises, whatever with you, and kind of cross things off as they work or don't work for you. So get it moving, get it strong, find the things with your therapist that are going to help work for you. And stick to that. Don't worry about what works for other people, because if it works for them, great. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't help. Another couple of things from the training stuff, or on the training and re-strengthening side of rehab, and this is maybe a little bit more like later stage rehab once you've kind of got that thing moving and whatever. Maybe not. Again, very, very much depends. Is using isometric and eccentric exercises. Now, those are 2 big science-sounding words, but I promise they're not. There are 3 types of muscle contractions, essentially. One is an isometric contraction. Isometric means when the muscle is contracting or squeezing, but not moving. So it's like when you're flexing your bicep. Your muscle is contracting, but it's not moving, as in your arm is not bending. Right? We're going to use bicep to explain these things. So isometric is flexing your bicep. Now that can be in any range. Like your arm could be all the way straight and you flex your bicep. It could be all the way bent and you flex your bicep, or any range in between that. And so if you have an injured elbow or something with your bicep, there may be various isometric exercises that you can use to start to strengthen that muscle. This could also be like pushing up against a wall or a doorway or a pole of some sort to help to flex that muscle. An eccentric contraction is the lowering portion. So when my arm is straightening, think of if I have a dumbbell in my hand and my arm is fully bent, I'm going to lower the dumbbell down to straighten my arm while controlling the downwards motion rather than letting gravity take it. I'm resisting against gravity, but still letting it extend out. That is an eccentric contraction. Typically in rehab, this will be the next step after isometric contractions. You go to eccentric contractions where you're like resisting the movement down. It's usually like easier. You can control a lot more weight. You're much stronger eccentrically than you are concentrically. Think you might be able to hold a very heavy dumbbell in your hand and controlled lower it, but you might not be able to curl it all the way back up, even if you're not injured. You might be able not to curl it all the way back up, but you could lower it under control. That's the eccentric contraction. And these are 2, like, again, step 1, step 2 of contractions or types of exercises that you might want to include and that your therapist will probably include to some variation. within your rehab protocol. And then 3 is the concentric contraction, which is the third stage of getting back into movements through rehab. Concentric contractions are when you're lifting the weight. So now the weight is at the bottom in my hand with our dumbbell curl, and I'm lifting the weight, bending my arm, curling the bicep up towards my shoulder. That's the concentric contraction. And all muscles, all movements have all of these things involved. So just something to know if that's a word that comes up. There are definitely types of exercises and ways that you can train around things. Going back to step 6, that you can say, hey, maybe I can't squat up, but I can like squat down. And then you have to find some way to get out of that. So that's a bad example, but like, different machines and stuff can do this, or if you have a training partner or whatever. So that's that. I mean, then you just keep doing that until you're home free, right? You've been doing your rehab, you're keeping it moving, you're doing all that stuff, and that's it. Then you eventually heal the injury, and then you're back to training. You're back to, you can move through a full range of motion. You're back to your pre-injury strength, and now you're back into regular training, trying to get big and jacked again, because isn't that what we're all just trying to do with our life? I think, maybe, I hope so. Maybe I'm alone. I don't know. But yeah, keep doing that until you're home free. Some other considerations to talk about. This episode is going a little longer than I thought it was going to, but what else is new? Some other things to think about out of the protocol there, and I will recap that at the end. Food. My suggestion is this: if you were trying to lose weight in a weight loss phase, in a calorie deficit, which you must be if you're trying to lose weight. Get out of the deficit and at least get yourself back up to maintenance. Give your body the fuel to heal. You're not going to disrupt the fat loss process that much. I mean, listen, you need to eat back up to maintenance, which is not that much more food. And I'm not saying go out on a binge and start eating ice cream and pizza and get as much fuel into your body as possible. Like you're not trying to regrow your arm here. You're trying to like heal an injury. So you don't want to be giving your body putting your body in a position where it has to pull nutrients from other places to heal itself. Like that's not really a good strategy. It's going to make the healing process probably a little bit more difficult. It's probably not as good. So you want to fuel yourself back up to maintenance. Maintenance means that your body has the fuel that it needs to run itself accordingly. So give yourself that grace. You're not going to disrupt the fat loss process. You're not going to lose all your progress. Going up to maintenance doesn't mean that you start gaining weight. Going up to maintenance means that you stop losing weight, right? And stopping to lose weight is not the same as gaining weight, right? Maintenance means maintaining. It means staying where you're at. You keep the progress that you've made. So get up to there. Eat lots of protein. Give your body the protein is the building blocks of the things that's going to help out to rebuild whatever you just injured. Avoid junk food. This is like pretty standard stuff. I mean, maybe that first night when you're having your little hissy fit, maybe have something just to help you get over it, which is a slippery slope, and maybe don't do that. But after that, don't eat junk food. Like this is just basic nutrition advice. Like eating junk food is not ever going to help you. Of course, it's delicious, all that stuff. It's not ever going to be like, oh, this is like the better thing to do. Like it's not. And lastly, make sure you're drinking lots of water. Muscles like to be hydrated, and joints like to be hydrated. You're actually way more likely to get injured if you are dehydrated. So be hydrated, drink your electrolytes if you need to, if you sweat a lot. Drink lots of water. Eat your vegetables, eat your protein. Like it's the same nutrition advice as always. Just pay attention to it, fuel your body accordingly, and that's that. Supplements. Supplements, unfortunately, like always, they're really most probably not going to move the needle a ton in the face of an injury. And if they were, you would have to be taking them in much higher dosages than is on the bottle and than you're used to. I'm not going to go in here and start giving out dosages because they're obviously person dependent and whatever, and there's some potential contraindications in here, but like, on your bottle of omega-3 fish oil that says take 1 capsule a day, if you just start taking 1 capsule a day, like that's not going to do anything for your injury, right? And a supplement in a normal state is just supplementing your diet. It's giving you that little bit extra. It's fine. It's good. it's helpful. It's just keeping you at your normal level. In an injured state, and when you're using a supplement, you're trying to heal something, which needs more than it does just to maintain it. So you can't just be taking that same, small piddly ass dose that they have of everything on the label that just satisfies, government requirements and whatever other nonsense that is like almost not useful anyways. But now I'm getting on a tangent. You're going to have to take more than you need to. And I'm happy to like discuss that with you on an individual basis, but I'm not going to sit here and give recommendations for dosages of supplements here. But either way, like they're just not going to move the needle a ton. Things I would think about taking: omega-3, magnesium, zinc, vitamin C. Some people take collagen. I think it's probably not useful at all. And make sure you're getting your protein, but that's not really a supplement. But yeah, omega-3s, magnesium, zinc, vitamin C. But these are also like things that you should or could be taking on like kind of a regular basis. So it's not really anything super special. Yeah, you're just gonna need to take them at a little bit higher dosage than the normal dosage. But yeah, if you have questions about that, send me a message. I'll happily discuss that with you individually. Ice and heat. This has been a hotly contested subject for a long time now. The previous or old school kind of thinking was, get an injury, get some ice on that. That's kind of the old wisdom. The current thought is to actually not do that. When we spoke earlier in step 2 about getting it moving and the inflammation process and how that inflammation process is actually the healing process, that inflammation process is protecting and bringing nutrients to the injured site so that the blood and the nutrients can, fix whatever is broken in there. When you ice things down to bring down the inflammation, you are interrupting that inflammatory process by restricting blood flow to the area and not letting inflammation take place. Now, you don't want to over-inflame the thing because that's also going to cause some problems. You just want like a middle of the road level of inflammation, which, shocker, the middle or somewhere halfway is usually the right thing. So icing is really going to interrupt that process. Now, ice makes it feel good because it numbs the area. And when it numbs the area, then you don't feel pain. And like sometimes, like that's why it was kind of thought about, like, oh, when I put ice on it, it stops hurting. Like, okay, good. But it's interrupting the healing process. So ice, most probably not a good idea to put on immediately, maybe like a couple days later if there's still like a lot of swelling and then you're trying to like flush that swelling out. But like in theory, like compression and movement would be actually better than icing to move that swelling out once it's kind of like done its thing, the extra fluid. You want to squeeze the area with like a tensor bandage or like a voodoo floss band or something like that and keep it moving. And that is going to create more blood flow that is going to move the stuff out. It brings the stuff in, but it also moves the stuff out. You want your body to just flush this out. Now, heat will possibly like exacerbate the inflammation process. And it might also be a pain reliever. Sometimes, just putting a hot pack, you're a little tight, you put a hot pack on something, it feels nice. It can be good because you're bringing more stuff to the area. You're expanding blood flow, right? The blood vessels are going to expand. More blood flow to the area is a good thing. Ice, blood vessels are going to constrict, reduce blood flow to the area, bad thing. So heat's going to bring more blood flow to the area. It might feel good. How much it's really going to help other than like just feeling nice, TBD. If it feels nice, it's probably not going to do anything bad. It's probably not going to do anything negative, but it's probably just not going to help that much either, other than maybe feeling a little bit good. So if anything, use heat, not ice, especially immediately. You can use ice a little bit later, but really just like compression and movement are going to be better than both of those things most of the time. Drugs and alcohol. I mean, in general, like just avoid these things. Like it's just general health advice. They're certainly not helping, especially alcohol, right? Blood thinning, constricts your blood vessels, limiting blood flow to the area, not healthy and not good nutrients and all that stuff, which is we've talked about 7 times now already in this podcast. Less things getting where they need to go, and also numbing you to the pain in a way that makes you unaware of it. This is another thing, like with the ice and with Advil and stuff, which I'll talk about in a second here, or I'll talk about right now. But like when the thing is just numb and you don't feel it, remember that pain is a teacher, right? So when pain is present, it's telling you that this is not good. If you can't feel when it's not good, it doesn't mean that the tissue is not damaged. It just means in the presence of something that is numbing the pain. If you normally, you can move around and you feel good and there's no pain, it means that there's no damage there. That's fine. In the presence of alcohol or various other drugs, Advils and painkillers of whatever, if you can't feel the pain, it doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means that you can't feel it. And so you may end up causing more damage to the thing that you have just injured because you are moving it or doing something in a way that is causing more damage. You're just not feeling pain, so you're not getting that sensory feedback to stop doing it. So especially avoid alcohol, try and avoid those anti-inflammatory things for the same reason as the ice, where you're interrupting the normal healing process. Inflammation is normal in the face of an injury. So there's a time and a place for them. If the pain is like really unbearable, then like maybe, but for like a painkiller, not alcohol, if the pain is really unbearable, then maybe, but really like try and suck it up. It's not helping in any way other than numbing the pain down a little bit. It's certainly not healing the injury. It's not doing anything good for you in that sense other than just numbing you down a little bit. Now, maybe one caveat to this, maybe, but probably also not really, is marijuana, is that it might help numb some of the pain, might help bring down some inflammation later on. It doesn't interrupt the inflammation process, but it'll reduce it later on. But again, like you're becoming numb to the thing, and so you might end up doing something that is hurting it without realizing it. You get a little bit too, overconfident in that part of the body. So like I would still avoid it. I don't think that any of these things are going to help you in any way. And I think that in general, like avoid these things obviously, but I think that there are probably more downsides to positives with these. So I know that it feels good, but that comes at a cost. So, just be aware of that, be aware of what the trade-off is, and especially from like the psychological side with pain-killing medication. Advil's not strong enough, but like other stuff, like we are in a massive opioid crisis because people take crazy amounts of painkillers prescribed by doctors, and there's a whole, like, we're not going to talk about why that is, and I don't know all the answers to that thing, but like even if it's not an opioid thing, you can definitely get into some sort of psychological dependence on alcohol, marijuana, painkillers, even low-level over-the-counter painkillers, or any of these type of things, because every time I like hurt my ankle, I just take that, and you just always keep taking it, and it's not good, and it spills into other areas of your life, and it's like it can spiral downwards real fast. So avoid taking them. They are not in any way helping you heal the injury. They maybe help you feel a little better momentarily, but they're not in any way helping you heal the injury. So avoid if at all possible. Now, last thing, and then we'll wrap this up. BPC 157 is a peptide that has gained popularity immensely over the past couple of years. It maybe deserves a whole podcast episode, and I'm trying to work on finding some people who are experts in the whole peptides thing to come on and talk to us about it, because I want to learn a lot more myself. Everything that I've seen, and this may change in the future, but everything that I've seen up to this point says that BPC 157 is probably not a good idea to take. People say that it definitely works, and it essentially works by, and get this is all going to tie into itself. It essentially works by producing or causing angiogenesis at an injury site. Angiogenesis, you remember we said that word earlier, is creation of new blood vessels. So it's bringing more blood flow to the injured area. But you know what else brings more blood flow is movement and having good cardio. So this is a reason not to skip your cardio. So BPC 157 is doing that, and it's also basically like proliferating growth hormone factor sites. Now, these can be good for injuries, but the downside of this is that this can also proliferate cancer that is existing in the body, either at that place of the injury or somewhere else in the body, because it goes systemically. It's not just localized to one site, even if you inject it only at the point of injury. So yes, it can work. It seems to be more effective for places in the body where that get really low blood flow. So if you had like something that happened like in your knee joint, maybe in your shoulder joint, or inside a joint that, it's the cartilage or the ligament or something that has low blood flow. But if it's like just a muscle, like muscles have pretty good blood flow, it's probably not actually going to help that much. And like the risk of cancer proliferation, especially if you currently have some type of cancer, then definitely do not take it. Absolutely do not. But any one of us could have some level of cancerous cells inside of us at any time, and if you're giving the body some way to proliferate that's obviously not a good thing. So it seems to me, and again, I as more research comes out and I talk to more people and learn more things, I may change this, and maybe something that I use down the line in future injuries. Currently, I will not be using it. I think that the risks outweigh the benefits. I don't think that it's that strong of a beneficial thing. I think a lot of people have pretty shitty rehab protocols, and then they just use it and then say like, oh my God, it made me feel so much better. And maybe it helped a little bit, but like you can't really, there's no control group, right? You can't like get an injury and then do nothing and see how it feels, and then get the exact same injury in the exact same way, and then use BPC 157 and see how your body responds to it differently. Like you're a different person, it's a different injury. It's impossible to actually have a legit control group on this thing for yourself anyway. So I think people overhype it as they overhype everything, almost everything. But I felt like it was necessary just to throw that in there. I personally, again, do not think that it is worth using. But TBD, as better products come out, more research comes out. There's not a lot of human control trials on BPC 157, and it's more kind of like in the dark. But sometimes, the bro science, the bodybuilding, the people who are willing to push the needle forward and push science forward and experiment on themselves, sometimes they are way ahead of the actual research. So people say good things about them. Obviously, do your own research and make your own decisions for yourself. But that's essentially how it works. And if you can get those same benefits without the downsides by moving, by proper training, by compression, by having good cardiovascular health and continuing to do your cardio and not skipping your cardio, not only when you're not injured, but when you're healthy as well. Like if you can create that best environment for healing, you're taking care of your sleep, taking care of your nutrition, taking care of your hydration, all those things, then you're giving yourself the best chance anyways. And what I think about some of these kind of things is like, well, if you're not taking care of all those things and you use something that's like quite powerful, maybe it makes up for a lack of something, maybe not. But if you're just taking care of all the stuff, like how much actually better is it? And you're giving yourself all these potential negatives. So there's going to be no downsides of sleeping well, no downsides of eating healthy, no downsides of drinking water, of doing your cardio, of training properly, of being mobile, all those things. So do all those things first, and then then we'll see. But probably spend too much time on that. So that's the wrap up. To finish off the 8 steps again: 1, assess for severity. Do you need to go to the hospital or not? 2, get it moving. 3, assess for the specifics of what helps or what hurts and what doesn't hurt. 4, be upset, have your hissy fit, have a little bit of a tantrum. 5 and 6, rework your workout plan so that you can keep training and figure out what you can do that doesn't hurt the injury at all, and what you can do that is related to the injury but a different variation or a different form of the exercise that you can still train around that injury. Number 7, see a manual therapist. And number 8, specific to you, active rehab focused on expanding range of motion and gaining back strength and full muscle function or motor control over the injured area. So that's it. Those are the protocols on what to do when you get injured. I hope this has been helpful. I hope, I knock on wood for yourself and for myself, that you don't get injured and that I don't get injured anymore. But chances are, like, it's going to happen at some point, minor or major or whatever. But hey, this is just what happens. This is how it goes. It's good to accept the possibility that it's going to happen, and then also have a plan in place for what you should do if and when it does happen. This way you're more prepared, and when you're more prepared, better things happen. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this has been helpful for you. It's been helpful for me to think through it and talk it out. And thanks for the support and everyone who reached out on this most recent injury and offering kind words and all that stuff. It really does mean a lot, because this really does This really does suck being going through this again, but it is what it is. I'm trying to show more of what I'm doing in the face of it. So hopefully that's helpful for you too. Subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the email list, follow me on Instagram, send this podcast to a friend. That's how this whole thing will grow even more and will help even more people just like you. I appreciate you. Go outside. Be a good person. See you next time.